record, go for it.
All right. My name is Ashton Guerrero.
My name is Lauren Claremont.
My name is Shane Robinson.
And we have Michelle. And the first topic we're going to talk about is what we know about Mr. Jones and his class of students.
All right.
So, what we know for a fact is that he teaches middle school, and there is 2 special ed classes on the campus.
And then he teaches a math class of 7th and 8th graders.
We also know the socioeconomic status of the students because it states that 85% of his students are on reduced or free lunch.
Mm-hmm. And then it seems like some of the students they talk about have different learning disabilities or are English language learners. So he has a pretty diverse classroom.
And it seems like within the students that are having challenges, one of the main challenges that they're having is difficulty asking for help, volunteering, and asking questions in general.
So pretty much like their social skills, almost engaging and interacting with other students and with the teacher.
I agree. Do we want to move on to what we want to know?
Anybody else have any other ideas, thoughts?
I just wanted to add that I think Mr. Jones really cares about his students. He wants to be intentional in his teaching. Like he was intentional about making sure that he had sufficient data to, in order to know that he needed to change his instructional strategies.
Agree. Anything else?
Are you guys getting all the feedback, or is that just me?
I'm not getting any feedback.
Yeah, I'm not. Max.
I'm going to move on to what we want to know. One of my questions was, now I'm getting feedback. Do the students have IEPs? I did notice it was mentioned for one student as we moved on, but I was curious about the students that are having challenges if they have IEPs and how much Mr. Jones is utilizing that as well as working with other professionals at the school with the IEPs.
Yeah, that was a good one. I also was wondering, I wanted to know the English language development of his non-native speaking or non-native students, because he has 2 Mexican nationals and then the Indian student, right? That's trying to become a citizen.
Mm-hmm.
So that might factor into why they're not volunteering or, sharing as well.
And then I was curious of what is his teaching method, if he has a standard or if he has different teaching methods for different students, or if he incorporates UDLs in his plan.
And I think to go with that, was that Ashton?
Yes.
I was also wondering, like, class management style.
Mm-hmm.
And also touching on that, I was wondering about what he's using as motivation techniques with his students also. Diving into that. And that sort of goes with classroom teaching styles as well. Has he touched upon culture also might motivate a lot of his students?
Yes.
Adding on to the classroom management bit, when he's talking about the student Marta, he talks about she frequently turns and talks to another girl in class in Spanish, and he is constantly having to talk over to her, which is disruptive to the class, so it doesn't sound like he has a good handle on his class if he's not if he's just kind of like, he's not really asserting his authority as a teacher to say, to basically say, hey, like, stop disrupting the entire class. He just talks over it instead.
Mhm. Yeah, so class management is pretty important.
And there was one other point I saw was with the challenges that he's facing, students asking for help, asking questions, volunteering. Has he tried small groups, working in smaller groups, which is often beneficial in math classes? In a lot of classes, it's beneficial. But I didn't notice that he mentioned that. And that can be good for students that are more shy or have difficulty speaking in front of a class or speaking with the teacher.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Curious what type of like technology or educational resources that he had access to for his students that might benefit them.
Or if he's even collaborated with like other teachers or aides about problems with his students, or parents as well too, if he's sat down and had meetings with them.
And touching on that, because it's a pretty small school district, I was wondering if he's talked to previous teachers of these students and seen ways that they address these problems.
Right. Adding on to that, for the last student, at the very last line for the that's got cerebral palsy, it finished with, I haven't talked with the special education teacher yet, just the paraprofessional. So it sounds, I mean, that's the kid he says he's not having a problem with, but it does seem like he's not necessarily reaching out to other teachers at the school about any issues that his students might have.
Perfect. Anyone else got anything?
I like that. I think we all agree that he needs to utilize other teachers in the school, other professionals, and families. I liked that point. So he's not mentioning that he's working with these other people that could help the students and help him. Are we ready to move on to our initial thoughts about these students?
Yep.
Okay. Anybody want to start with Ray?
I can start with Ray. So just initially, I think he needs to be around someone that's going to help him engage and interact more and help build with his social skills. I also think that he should probably sit toward the front of the class with his hearing aids and hearing problem from his accident. Anybody else?
I was wondering how much his disability is affecting his social life at school and what that brings into the classroom. Is he being teased, or does he have relationships outside of the classroom? And does Mr. Jones know anything about that? And is that contributing to the fact that he is shy and so quiet when he speaks?
With him being a Mexican national, I also wondered his English language development. I think that sticks out for me because the school district that I work for is 97% Hispanic, and over 90% are English language learners. So even if they were born in the United States, they're still considered English language learners. L1, L2, or L3. So I just thought maybe, he could be struggling with that on top of his hearing issues and the brain injury.
One other thing I was wondering, I am curious how good his hearing is, because Mr. Jones focused on the fact that he's such a visual learner, and then he said again that he speaks quietly. Does the school know, is his hearing aid working properly? Does he get it tested? When was the last time he had a hearing test? Because that, to me, seems like something that would tie together, the visual learning and the hearing problems / quiet speaking.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because it says he's a good student. He does his homework. He just doesn't do good on tests. Responsible. He's polite and respectful.
Mhm.
So it's not like he's got problems with that. It's more of his disability that I think might be affecting him more.
Mhm. Anybody want to add anything else?
It doesn't say he has an IEP either, huh?
No, it does not.
So maybe that might be something to look into too for him.
Yeah, he was the first student I thought of in that, going back to the what would we want to know
Mhm.
if he has an IEP. That's what drew my attention to that point. Are you ready to talk about Marta?
Yeah, let's
Yes.
do Marta.
Okay. Well, one thought I had was, why does Mr. Jones have her seated next to a student that she's continuously talking to? Because as I read it, it seems like she just turns around and talks to the student. So I'm curious what the thought process is there.
So yeah, you probably should address that problem, either by moving her, or I don't know if she necessarily, because it says she doesn't respond to him or
Mm-hmm.
answer anything. So I don't know if she's even understanding him, if she like can't understand him, or if she just turns to the girl that speaks Spanish and talks to her. So obviously she needs a lot of support with the English language, I'm guessing.
I agree.
And then possibly even moving to by someone else who's going to help her with English and her work, and not just sit there and talk to her and let her copy or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that. I think she's probably struggles with the English language, her English language development. So uh, needs to help her with that. Maybe spend a little bit more time giving her things like sentence frames, or maybe part of the instruction in Spanish and then part of the instruction in English. Differentiate it somehow for her.
So having her work with a peer could be valuable. It's just possibly a different peer. Is that your idea?
Almost like finding the right one to
Yeah.
match pair with her.
I think that would make sense. Any other points anybody wants to make about Marta?
That's about it for me.
Okay. Dylan.
All right.
Well, one of my thoughts about Dylan was that he could be a peer that other students could work with, because he seems to be doing pretty well in class, but he does utilize that extra review. So working with peers that are possibly falling behind could serve as review for him. And it seems like he is a role model type in the classroom that could help them.
Yeah, I like that. Because it seems like he's pretty social, and he sits there and does his work, takes his notes, asks questions. So he's involved in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
So he could probably help other kids, if he's paired in a group with them or a partner, help them get involved in the class as well.
Yeah, he'd probably benefit from more collaborative work if he gets to actually work with the other students. Like whole brain style teaching.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't have too much other than that on him.
It seems like he needs something to motivate him a little bit more. Like maybe he's not working to his potential.
And maybe that relates to working with another student. Like maybe that would serve to motivate him and his leadership style. It seems like he has. What about Bill?
I think Bill could be a resource to the teacher. He could be used like as a helper, because he's a military brat, so I would assume he has had some pretty good leadership qualities, and he's been to 4 different countries, 5 different schools, so he's pretty outgoing. He can help other students with social skills, confidence, being a friend, even.
I'd like to kind of add, when we go from Ray and Marta, and then from Dylan and Bill, which is kind of supposed to be written with Mr. Jones as the narrator of this whole piece, describing his students, that there's a bit of a narrative shift sort of in the way he describes students. He's sort of more familiar with the 2 kids that have a more similar background to Mr. Jones, who, it doesn't tell us that Mr. Jones is a white teacher, but I kind of got that feeling from his name, John Jones.
Yeah.
So it seems like he's more even just like familiar with these students' cultural background and the way that they might be used to learning stuff, and the way that their home life might be more like, and he might not have a very good handle as much on the more diverse students that are from a different background. He doesn't have as much of he's just not as well versed in their cultural life, so to speak, and that could affect the way that he teaches and views his students. And like, for instance, for Gina, the next one, he says her scholarship surprises him as she doesn't look the part of a good student, which kind of suggests he has a lower expectation based on her appearances, and he doesn't have that expression towards Dylan or Bill.
Very good point. So he almost has like a biases or a.
Yeah, like a subconscious, like not that he's doing it on purpose, but it's something that he's not necessarily recognizing, that he is obviously more comfortable with these, like the way that he starts it with Dylan, sometimes I forget what it is like to be 13, right? And he doesn't really, with the 2 kids before that, it's very just like a description of facts with no, I don't know, like character or creative flair thrown into the description, right? It's just very straightforward. Whereas when he's describing Dylan, it's in this more familiar sense.
That's interesting that you say that, because it could be my own biases, that I noticed that with the 2 girls he described. The next 2 that are coming up, I noticed that
You noticed
differently.
that he talks to them differently?
Yes, they talked about Gina and Roxana. I noticed what you're saying, but so that is probably picking up on my own biases, that maybe as a female, I noticed that I thought he was talking about the 2 females differently. So
right, yeah, he talks about the way she dresses in much more detail than he does for any of the guys.
Yeah.
And he makes like a jab at the way that Roxana spells her name.
That's the one that got me.
At the end of it, which seems very much in line with the way that if you're an Iraqi national, how you would spell your name. That's didn't seem out of the ordinary at all to me, for someone who's from Iraq, that they would have that kind of spelling for their name, and he's taking this small jab at it.
Well, while we're on that, why don't we move on to Gina, because I think we covered Bill. Do you want to move on to Gina, everybody? Okay.
Yeah.
So we're kind of now talking about the teacher, Mr. Jones' biases possibly coming into play and how he views these students. I personally feel that Mr. Jones is being dismissive of trade school as an option for people, because you can be very successful in going to a trade school, and I don't think it should be dismissed by a teacher. Anything that wants to further your education should be dismissed by a teacher. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
Yeah, he could just be more supportive in general.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously he knows that she has a single mother who works nights as a bartender. So he could kind of point her in the right direction too. give her some extra support, and yeah, just give her the right sense of direction and her become a woman.
I also noticed that he only mentions that he's wondering why she's not going to college. He doesn't say that he's talked to her about it, and that's sort of what you're saying, Ashton, that he could be giving her direction instead of just thinking it all to himself. He could step in and make some, give her some ideas of what her future could have.
Yeah, exactly.
I noticed it says her scholarship.
Yeah.
So I wonder if it's like, is it a private school? Is it why does she have a scholarship?
I was wondering about that too. And he says her scholarship also surprises me that she doesn't look the part of a good student.
Mm. And having attitude and being in your face,
Mm-hmm.
How does that not make you a good student? Like, you can be smart and have attitude. No, do all your work and get A's. Like, that's just maybe the way that she interacts with people. So I feel like he's not very culturally aware.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think this is real. His description of her is really strongly showing his biases, in my point of view.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I am curious what that scholarship is. I don't.
Because it doesn't specify, it just is a small school district.
Okay, so that's another thing we want to know, going back to that.
I don't think by scholarship they mean money. I think he just means her, like, scholarly ability.
Oh,
yeah.
See, we needed you. There we go. That's group work.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out what you guys were talking about with, like, why is it a private school? Because it talked about a school district, but you guys meant, I just figured it out. You meant like a money scholar. Yeah, you mean
Yep, we meant money.
No, but you're right. Her scholarship, that makes sense.
Because she doesn't look the part of a good student.
Yes.
Right.
Good teamwork.
I know. What? Okay, so.
Anything else for Gene?
No, I think we could move on to how do you think you pronounce this, Roxana? I'm going by how he spelled it at the end.
Yeah, shouldn't it be Roxanne or Roxana?
Or Roxana. It might have kind of a U, Roxana kind of sound.
That sounds good. All right. And let's see, this is what I have about it. I think this is where his cultural awareness really shows, or lack of cultural awareness really shows, especially in commenting about the spelling of her name.
Yeah, this stood out to me a lot because I have a student, her name is Katie, and I don't know how to pronounce it. Like when her parents say her name, I'm always mesmerized. But she spells it Keiry. So I pronounced her name like Carrie for the first week of school, and then she came to me. She's like, "No, it's basically Katie, but there's an R. It's Keiry." It just threw me off. And she's Hispanic. I'm not exactly sure from where. But it's the same type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not being very culturally sensitive.
Well, I think the difference is he seems to see it as there's something wrong with the way she's spelling it.
Yeah.
And you just didn't know that was the pronunciation.
It's true, but at the same time, I kind of thought, that's weird, So I'm like,
I don't think that's
with an R.
I don't think that's too off, because some put because it's what you grew up with certain pronunciations. So to say that it's it is a little weird to us, it's just it would only be bad if you made a big deal out of it with the student or something. If you're just well, that's just not right or something. That would be
Hmm.
That would be bad. Like what this guy's doing, where he's really harping on the spelling of her name and how it's pronounced because it's very foreign to him and like he doesn't like it, versus just being like, oh, it's a little bit, that's, it's almost like, oh, that's weird, that's interesting. Today I learned how this other place has different pronunciations, which is a bit different from what he's doing here.
I also think maybe she has an issue with the English language.
Hmm.
Iraqi national, and she might not have a good command of the English language, so that could be a struggle for her, and why she's a little more quiet. But then at the same time, like that might be a cultural thing for her. Growing up, she might know school to be like, you need to be, you're quiet in school, you're polite, and always turn in your homework, but it's not a real collaborative environment either for her. Because I know that Hispanic culture, collaboration is very, very important, but that's not in every culture.
She seems like a candidate. Both Ashton and I were saying that could use some extra support, maybe even peer support.
Mm-hmm. Because it says she's got a low C or high D, and then her mom is she didn't finish high school and doesn't know algebra, so she's not getting the at-home help, it seems.
Mhm.
So if she's not getting any extra help at school, then it's just going to continue to, her grade's going to continue to drop. She's not going to learn anything.
I agree. Okay, finally, let's move on to Steven. I think Mr. Jones would benefit with meeting with the special ed teacher. Even though Steven's doing great in the class, it would probably be beneficial to see what he's doing in special ed instead of and he does have a relationship with a paraprofessional, but I would recommend actually talking to the special ed teacher. Anybody else have any ideas about him?
Sorry, I was trying to get my charger.
He does seem like a student. I don't know. It seems like because he's doing well in the class, that he'd be good to work with other students potentially, but he might have a hard time doing that because of his
Extreme
lack of ability to articulate quickly, essentially. So he might have a hard time communicating with other people.
What stood out to me with Steven was the fact, he's gifted, he's intelligent, he's understanding the content, but more of the social emotional side of it for him. Like, how can he make sure that he's feeling included in everything, that it's inclusive for him? So, like you had said, saying that collaborating with the other students might be difficult because his very limited natural speech, and it's hard for him to understand those that are unfamiliar to him. So how does he collaborate and participate and feel included?
I completely agree with you. Is Mr. Jones making him a part of the classroom community, or is he just working with this paraprofessional? Is that his confidant, his peer in the class? I saw that same thing. Any other points anybody wants to make about Steven?
You guys hit it on the head.
Okay. Well, I think our first recording went well, and hopefully next time I'll have a camera, and I apologize for that. But I appreciate everybody showing up.
Clarify real quick.
Mm-hmm.
This assignment, I think, I don't know if it was Shane or Ashton.
Why didn't I pause the recording? Is that okay?
Oh yeah, you're fine. Do
Okay.
that.